Liberal lost decade with prices rising, our immigration system out of control. We need change, and it's only the Conservatives who can bring about that change.
The team that will deliver that change. Ned Couric in Hamilton East, Stony Creek. Ned. Dan Muse, Flamborough, Glanbrook, Brant North. Erica Alexander. Give her a round of applause. She, of course, is the granddaughter of the great Lincoln Alexander, who was the first black member of Parliament, first black minister in Canadian history, a great Conservative, a towering legend in the Canadian story, and we look forward to her carrying on his wonderful legacy. We have Ken Hewitt, Hayden Lawrence, Emily Brown, Ron Chinzer. Give them all a round of applause. I'd like to thank the many members of the Hamilton Police Association who are joining me today. I would also like to thank, based on last night's news, I don't know if you all heard this news, but it's official. The Toronto Police Union is ready for change, and they are endorsing the Conservative plan to make our streets safe for all Canadians. It means the world to me to have the support of our most courageous people. The police who put on a uniform and they leave in the morning kissing their kids goodbye, knowing that they may not return. They do all of that so that you and I can walk our streets safely. And yesterday, I released a plan for change that will make life more affordable and safe in our country. Change means safe streets, good jobs, powerful paychecks. Change means unleashing our resources so we can stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to the world from a position of strength. Over the next 4 years, my plan will cut $55 billion of bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, and Liberal waste in order to reduce by 70% the Liberal deficit that we will inherit on Monday. By contrast, Mark Carney, we learned that Mark Carney's platform was actually written for Justin Trudeau. It was actually, this is not a figure of speech. The platform team of the Liberal Party wrote up a platform in the fall, and they gave it to Trudeau. And then when they switched him out and replaced him with his economic advisor, oh, we've got a little cough there. We're okay? All right, all right. I think he was reacting to the deficit in Mark Carney's platform. I always like to tell the story of when our little baby boy was born, and he came out, and little baby Cruz, and he wasn't crying. And of course, that's every parent's worst nightmare. And then the doctor came over and whispered something in his ear. And all of a sudden, a great cry went out, and we were so relieved that he was going to be okay, so we held him in our arms. And afterwards, I walked up to the doctor, and I said, "Doctor, what did you tell our little infant to make him cry ever so much?" He said, "Well, I just told him that his share of the national debt was $90,000. But it's about to get a lot bigger under Mark Carney. They took this platform, they wrote it for Trudeau, and then Mark Carney takes the leadership and doesn't bother to write his own plan, because his plan has been carried out over the last 5 years while he was Trudeau's economic advisor. So why would he presume to change anything? Well, there is one thing he changed. In addition to all of the spending that Trudeau had already budgeted for, Mark Carney's plan would add $130 billion more. When you take Trudeau's plans and Carney's promises, a fourth Liberal term would mean $250 billion of additional inflationary debt that will drive up food and housing prices even more. In fact, Mark Carney, I've said he's no different than Trudeau. The truth is, he will cost even more than Justin Trudeau. He has phantom numbers he can't explain. Yesterday, he was lashing out at even Liberal economists. Liberal economist Trevor Tombe said that Mark Carney's platform is reckless and irresponsible, and Mark Carney arrogantly lashed out, not wanting people to know how much Liberal inflation he would bring if he were to be re-elected for a fourth Liberal term. Now, add it all up. Can you afford a fourth Liberal term of $250 billion more inflationary debt? Can you afford that? No. After the lost Liberal decade? To pay for it all, he would have to raise taxes. There's no question he would reinstate the tax increases Trudeau had planned. He would raise other taxes. Only on others, not on him. He would stash his cash in overseas tax havens. But over the last lost Liberal decade, Canada is heading in the wrong direction, and fast. Now, I don't know if you saw the story this week about the Liberal government actually published a report about how the country will look in 15 years. Now, this is important because what Liberals have been telling you is forget about the last 10 years of Liberal government. Pretend it didn't happen. That was then, this is now, the past is the past, forget about it. Well, what does the future look like? Not according to me, but according to them. Well, they published this report. And, you know, it'd be nice, frankly, this is a jaw-dropping report to be published by the Government of Canada before the election. Future Lives, Social Mobility in Question. And this is the Government of Canada's own report. If I had alleged the things in this report, the media would be attacking me as outlandish. But this is what the government says the future has in store on our current trajectory. And I will emphasize that this is their own words. This is what they have to say. I say that many times just so because the shock value of this report is so massive that you would find it hard to believe the things that they say. The report says that in 2040, more people may struggle to afford rent, bills, and groceries. On housing, in 2040, owning a home is not a realistic goal for many, and inequality between those who rent and those who own has become a key driver of social, economic, and political conflict. The report paints a terrifying picture of national spiral of depression and decline. It forecasts widespread mental health crises, quote, forcing young workers to actually leave the country. If young workers leave Canada, I'm quoting now, it may be harder to pay for the systems that support a growing number of older people. It says that people will lose faith in the Canadian project altogether, and this, the most startling comment of all, that food prices will become so unaffordable on the current path that people may have to start, quote, hunt, fish, and forage on public lands and waterways. Can you imagine in Canada where people are to the point where they can't even go into a grocery store anymore, and they actually have to go forage on public lands in order to scrape out an existence? This sounds incredible, like something from a post-apocalyptic television series like The Fallout, The Last of Us, but this is not that. It is a Liberal government forecast. And it's not for 100 years from now, it's for 15 years from now. Is that the future that you want for your kids? No. That is not change. That is more of the inflationary spiral the Liberals have brought us over the lost decade. And Mark Carney will continue with every single policy he inherits from Justin Trudeau. He might look different, he might use more different buzzwords, but it is exactly the same Liberal agenda. We cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. After 10 years of Liberal government, predictions about housing shortages, mental health crises, and a loss of hope for many Canadians is already the reality. It's funny, yesterday a CBC host was saying, well, are all of these terrible things in this government report really realistic? Could they really happen in 15 years? And to her credit, another journalist said, well, for a lot of Canadians, that's the way it is now. That's how desperate the situation has already become after 10 years of Liberal government. So the choice of this election could not be clearer. A fourth term Liberal term with Mark Carney, whose plan is even more reckless and costly than Justin Trudeau's, or a new Conservative government that will cut waste and bureaucracy, bring down taxes, unleash home building and resource development so that Canadians can afford a good life on a safe street. That's the choice before us today. That's a good choice. Nothing has become a more profound symbol of the lost Liberal decade, nothing more than the homeless encampments that were unheard of before this government took office, but have now become a part of everyday life. The crime that is associated with them, the violence and the fear that is now overtaking our streets because of liberal drug criminal justice, border and other policies. Violent crime is up 15%. Gun crime up a shocking 116%. Extortion and auto theft up 357% and 46% respectively. And you are the ones facing it on the front lines, the police officers here with me today, and there are many police officers in this crowd. They're the ones facing it. Here in Hamilton, an innocent young woman was killed waiting for the bus to go to work just the other day. The shot was apparently fired from a passing SUV at another car, but missed and hit her instead. She was a student studying at Mohawk College with her whole life ahead of her. It was a shocking and senseless tragedy. Also this week, the court is hearing closing arguments in the case of two individuals charged with shooting OPP Constable Greg Pierre just 3 years ago. Again, he was a young man, a heroic young man with his entire life ahead of him, a loving son and brother whose loss has left his family and law enforcement with holes in their hearts. Randall McKenzie, one of the accused, had a criminal record a mile long, and is so often the case, he was out on bail for one violent offense when he allegedly committed this crime. Imagine where we would be today. Imagine where Mr. Pierre family would be today if he had not been released on bail. Imagine if conservative 3 strikes you're out laws were actually in place and he had been locked away. What would have happened? And more importantly, what would not have happened? Sadly, these kinds of tragedies have become all too common in recent years. For the last 10 years, the Liberal government has unleashed this crime with lax laws like C-75, which requires judges release offenders under, quote, the least onerous conditions at the earliest opportunity, a law that Mark Carney has pledged, a Liberal law that Mark Carney has pledged to keep in place. Liberals brought in house arrest, C5, which allows repeat offenders to do their sentences in their living rooms, watching Netflix, able to walk out the door at any time to reoffend. And instead of promising to work with law enforcement to end the crime and chaos, Mark Carney has pledged to keep the Liberal policies in place. He wants to ban hunting rifles rather than banning gun criminals. As Prime Minister, I'll listen to law enforcement and work with them so that together we can reverse the dangerous Liberal crime wave of the last decade and bring home safe streets for a change, for a change, for a change. Safe streets used to be something we took for granted. People in Canada, in many communities, it's hard to believe this now, used to leave their doors unlocked. They have to sleep with their doors unlocked. It was incredible. And now we have a situation where the Toronto Chief of Police has to tell Torontonians, leave your car keys next to the front door so that if someone wants to steal your vehicle, they can safely do it and just come in and take the keys and leave with the car without hurting anybody. Is this how we keep people safe? We say, give your car to the thief so that he doesn't shoot you or stab you? This is insanity. But of course, it is what life looks like after this lost Liberal decade. One of the most visible signs of this total meltdown that Liberals admit in their own reports is going to worsen on the current path is these horrible homeless encampments. In Ontario alone, after the lost Liberal decade, there are 1,400 homeless encampments. It is unimaginable. It's like something out of the Great Depression. In Toronto, the number of homeless encampments more than doubled in just 1 year, from 82 in 2023 to 200 today. Homelessness is up 20% since 2018, roughly the time. It's interesting, Mark Carney became the economic advisor in 2020. And what has happened? Homelessness has gone up by 20%. Chronic homelessness up 38%. That is the legacy of this Liberal government. The Liberals promised to eliminate chronic homelessness. Instead, it went through the roof. And now they expect you to believe their promises for a fourth time and a fourth Liberal term. Instead, they've abandoned the vulnerable and condemned them to sidewalks and back alleys. Encampments now fill spaces where children once played and families once gathered. Our public spaces have become a breeding grounds for addiction, violence, human trafficking, and crime. Businesses around parks have been boarded up. Parents are afraid to let their kids cut through parks on their way to school. And for those trapped in these camps, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, our neighbors, they are left to suffer in the cold, to overdose, and sometimes to die alone. These are places where half-dead, contorted bodies lie on the ground on the verge of overdose from fentanyl, twisted, their spinal cords twisted from countless hours, hunched over in painful positions that they cannot sense because of the immense power of the poison running through their bodies and their minds. And the Liberals just say, let it continue. In fact, their policy has been to supply even more drugs, more opioids, keep the problem going, and keep an entire apparatus of bureaucracy and interest groups employed, expanding this problem. These homeless encampments are a symbol of everything this last Liberal decade has brought us. Doubling housing costs, out of control food prices, which put people under economic strain, and of course, rampant liberalization of drugs and crime, which allow the chaos to expand. The
Liberals had promised to eliminate chronic homelessness, but in fact they abandoned vulnerable Canadians and are now forcing them to live in the streets. Encampments are invading public spaces and playgrounds where children used to play previously and where families would get together safely. Our public spaces have become places where addicts stay and have given rise to more crime. Spaces around parks have been condemned. Parents are afraid to allow their children go through a park to get to school. And those who are imprisoned in these encampments, our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors, are left to fend for themselves in the cold, where they run the risk of dying of an overdose alone. That is not compassion. That is cruelty. The cruelty meted out to these people after 10 years of the Liberals.
These tent cities spread is not compassion, it is chaos. And it is the direct result of Liberals' pro-drug agenda, policies that have legalized hard drugs, pumped toxic narcotics into our streets under the failed banner of safe supply, and then left the victims with no other options. Nothing for treatment, nothing for recovery, no attempt to actually get people off drugs, and no change whatsoever to this policy proposed by Mark Carney, who wants to continue the exact same policies that he advised Justin Trudeau over the last 5 years. A new Conservative government will end the chaos and restore Canada's promise for a change. Public spaces. Public spaces must be safe for everyone. We will take back our streets and restore order in our communities. And we will give people that are currently trapped in these awful circumstances a pathway to a better life. A life with a home, with nutritious food, physical exercise, connections to family, a new chance to start over. It's going to be a future of hope. And the people who come out of these encampments from out of the shadows, they will come into the light and enjoy the Canadian dream, the Canadian promise. And they will have a superpower when they come from these backgrounds. They will have a superpower that they have lived through the worst valleys, and now they can appreciate the summit on which they will enjoy their lives. So our plan is clear. First, we will amend the criminal code to give police legal powers so that they can remove individuals who are a danger to public safety and clear public spaces where access is currently blocked by tents and temporary shelters. No more excuses by politicians claiming they don't have the powers. The powers will be right there in the criminal code. No more paralysis from politically correct liberal politicians who are too afraid to take action. Second, we will provide addiction treatment to 50,000 Canadians. We will return a true housing first model, get people into a home. But if their addiction is the thing preventing them from succeeding in that home, we will get them into addiction treatment. We will treat the problem. We'll offer mental health supports, job training, so police can connect the people in these camps with the care and the housing they need. Third, where appropriate, the occupants will face criminal charges, but we will give judges the power to order the people charged for illegally occupying these public places a simple possession charge that requires they go into treatment. So we're here to give people a way out. If someone is illegally occupying a public space, then we will allow judges to give them a sentence of drug treatment that will get them off the poisons that condemned them to that homelessness in the first place. And for more serious criminals, where addiction is a factor in their crime, but where their crime requires they do jail time, we will allow judges to make mandatory treatment a part of their prison sentence. And there will be regular drug tests for prisoners, because we know that if someone comes out continually addicted to drugs, they're probably going to re-offend. But if, on the other hand, while they're in prison, they're given treatment, recovery services, and they show that they pass drug tests again and again and again, then their chance at rehabilitation and becoming a successful part of society is much higher. That's how we're going to restore safe streets for a change. That's how we'll bring back hope for a change. A new
Conservative government will put an end to chaos and restore Canada's promise. Public spaces must be safe for everyone. We will take back control of our streets and restore order in our communities for a change. This is how we will do it. First, we will amend the criminal code to give police the powers they need, clear legal powers to arrest individuals who are endangering the public, and clear public spaces that have been blocked by tents and temporary structures. No more excuses from politicians. Second, we will provide addiction treatment to 50,000 Canadians, and we will come back to a housing-first approach. That means not only a roof over their heads, but real treatment, mental health services, and job training, so that the police can put these people in tents in contact with the care and the housing they need. Third, if need, occupants will face criminal charges. However, judges will have the power to order these people who are illegally occupying public spaces to be charged with simple possession, and therefore to get them into mandatory drug treatment. For more serious criminals, where addiction is a factor, judges will have the ability to order mandatory treatment while they're in jail to maximize the possibility of real rehabilitation. That is how we will bring back hope for a change, the hope that people can escape addiction, escape these horrible encampments. The hell that is blocking their life will be replaced by hope and a better future for a change.
We will make it possible for people to afford homes again. Our plan will axe the sales tax on home building, incentivize municipalities to cut their building taxes, to knock $100,000 of taxation off the cost of a home. We'll incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development taxes to build 15% more homes per year. We'll allow 300,000 homes to be built on federal lands that are otherwise underused or unused completely. This plan will allow 2.3 million homes, affordable homes, to be built for a change. We're going to make it possible for people to have a place to live. You know, many of the people in these camps, they didn't start off with that life, but what has been happening is because there's absolutely no hope for them. They might be a young person who's working 70 hours a week just to afford the rent and food, not saving up a nickel for a future down payment, no light at the end of the tunnel. So what happens then? Well, they relieve that hopelessness with a dose of the wrong drug. Then they're addicted. Then they're out of their apartment and on the street. We have to reverse the liberal housing hell and inflation that has made life so hopeless for so many. We cannot afford another 15 years of liberal inflation and depression. We need a change, and that's why we're here offering that change. This is about more than just cleaning up our sidewalks. It's about bringing back a good life for Canadians, the life that we used to take for granted. A Canada where hard work pays off for a change, where families can raise their children safely for a change, where seniors can walk without fear for a change, where people don't shun our downtowns for a change, where businesses can take down the boards on their windows and open up for serving customers and hiring workers for a change. We can't afford a fourth Liberal term of rising costs, crime, and chaos under the Liberals, with the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal advisors. We need a new Conservative government that will change course on crime and common sense laws. We will strengthen our border to keep out illegal drugs and guns, ensure repeat offenders go to jail and never come out. We will restore law and order, putting murderers behind bars. If we're going to bring in life sentences for fentanyl traffickers so that they never come out again. They are mass murderers, and they will be treated like mass murderers when I'm Prime Minister. We will shut down the taxpayer-funded drug dens and replace them with wonderful treatment centers filled with hope and excitement for people ready to start their lives. We will give the young men and women caught in this cycle of drugs and despair evidence-based treatment so we can bring our loved ones home drug-free for a change. It's time to stop the crime for a change, end the chaos for a change, put law-abiding Canadians first for a change. That is how we bring hope for a change. Thank you very much. Let's bring it home. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to questions, and we will start with a call-in question from the phone line.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. And your first question comes from the line of Leader Pierre Poilievre from Journal Le Nord. Please go ahead.
Bonjour, M. Poilievre. Dans ce contexte où l'État refuse de verser sa juste part d'impôt au Canada et bloque l'accès au contenu de nos médias,
people are blocking access to the media. People have been buying space on social media. So what is the position of the Conservatives when it comes to C-18, which forces U.S. media giants to compensate Canadian media for their content? That's a very good question. After the lost Liberal decade, we can no longer access media articles on Facebook and Instagram. The Liberals' policies have censored media, reduced the number of media, and many media are blocked from sharing their stories and articles. That is what the Liberals want. After driving up inflation and the cost of housing and crime in our streets, now the Liberals want less media. They want to control everything. We cannot allow them to have a fourth term with more inflation, more real estate inflation, and out-of-control crime. It has to change with a new Conservative government that will allow the media to share their information on social media platforms, including the question of affordability. We will make a change with affordable homes, with affordable groceries, and safe streets. That's the choice in this election. After a decade of rising costs and crime under the Liberals, can we afford another term for them? Or do we need change so that you have a safe and affordable home on safe streets?
Yes, look, a great question. It was about how after the lost Liberal decade, many media outlets cannot actually share their information on Facebook and Instagram. This has really attacked our local independent media, and maybe that's the goal with out-of-control inflation, rising housing costs, crime and chaos in our streets. Liberals are trying to get a fourth term by shutting out that information. Their entire campaign is based on making you forget what happened over the last 10 years of Liberal government, and forget what will happen in the next 15 years if you read this report that was just leaked out that says that Canadians will be forced to forage on public lands for food if things continue on the current Liberal track. So it's not surprising that Liberals would want to shut out discussion on that. But a fourth Liberal term is not the answer. What we need is a new Conservative government to bring change so you can afford food and homes, change so there's safety in your streets, change so that we have freedom of expression. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Arnold with Village Media.
Sorry,
Chris Arnold with Village Media.
Thank
I
you.
would like to actually build on the previous question. You had said previously that your government would cut funding for certain broadcasters and news outlets. I'm wondering if you can commit to not cut funding for local media and local news outlets that depend so much on grants from the government, subsidies from the government.
I can commit to that. I said that in my platform, you can see it there, that we're going to back local independent journalism, including the local journalism initiative. And we're also going to make sure that local media get their fair share of government advertising. It shouldn't only go to the Liberal government's favored media outlets. And, you know, the Liberals want censorship to silence people about the doubling of housing costs, the insane rise of food prices, the crime and chaos Liberals have unleashed in our communities. But that's exactly why we can't afford a fourth Liberal term. It's not just local media that are suffering under the Liberals, it's everybody. It's small businesses, it's shop owners, it's the steel workers here in Hamilton that Mark Carney wants to hit with another carbon tax. But we're not going to let them, their entire strategy is to make Canadians forget about the last 10 years by limiting debate and distracting. And they also want you to forget about the next 15 years if the Liberal policies remain in place. We need strong, independent media so that Canadians get all the information. We need to change. This election really comes down to one word. It's change. Change, change, change. Change so you can afford food. Change so you can afford homes. Change so that you are safe in your street. This election is about change. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Brad Hunter, Toronto Sun. My question is, the law and order has been a cornerstone of your platform. One thing I haven't heard a whole lot of is about youthful offenders, particularly given, some 16-year-old kids in the morgue following a shootout with Toronto cops. You know, he pulled first, and but what's the kid doing with the gun? You know, if he survived, was he only going to do 18 months? What do you think should be done with the young offender issue?
There do need to be, thank you very much for your question, and the story that you shared is another tragic result of the lost Liberal decade of lax criminal justice laws, weak borders, and drugs on our streets. You know, our kids are now more vulnerable to gang recruitment than ever before. Their parents are stressed out and exhausted. There's drugs and guns everywhere in our streets that have come in through the porous borders, and there's more poverty. 25% of our people live in poverty after the lost Liberal decade. And so our youth have never been so vulnerable. And I think if we elect the Liberals to a fourth Liberal term, it's going to be even worse for our young people. More crime, more danger, more inflation, more malnutrition. But we can't afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change to lock up the criminals, secure the borders, stop the drugs, guns, and stolen cars from going through our ports and across our frontiers. We need to give young people a sense of hope and opportunity again. I think one of the things I've noticed about my campaign is how many young people are involved. And it wasn't always the case for Conservatives. Well, why is it? Because we're giving young people hope. Hope that they're going to have a better future. Real hope for a change. I want every young person in this country to reject a life of crime, knowing that there's something so much better we have in store for them. A job where they can excel, a business that they can start, a community where they will thrive and succeed, a nice home where they'll raise families in the future and give grandchildren to their parents. That is the beautiful future that we have. I call it the Canadian promise. Let's bring it home for a change. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to the final question.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre. Tria Isri, Global News. Canada could be headed into a recession, yet your platform does not account for this uncertainty. How do you justify that?
Well, my platform, when you say it doesn't account for that, can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, part of your platform projects growth based on projects that have yet to happen, you know, by repealing C-69, by having growth with pipelines that could take years. So I just wonder, should you have erred more on the side of caution, given the fact that we're only a few months into a trade war?
Well, listen, first of all, the reason our economy has no growth and has been in a per capita recession for the last 5 years is because of the policies that Mark Carney advised Justin Trudeau's Liberals to implement. They are the reckless ones, and now what is ultimately the most reckless of all is in a period of uncertainty, Mark Carney says he wants to keep all of the spending that Justin Trudeau planned and then stack $130 billion more spending on top of that for a total of $250 billion of extra inflationary debt that will drive up the cost of food and fuel. Now, you ask me, in a period of economic weakness, after the Liberals have been in power for 3 terms, whether it is wise to campaign on economic growth. It's not only wise, it's essential for a change that we grow our economy. We need to unleash. Of course it's. What would be reckless is to continue with the same Liberal policies. Mr. Carney wants to keep Bill C-69. He wants to keep half of our oil in the ground. He wants to bring in a massive new industrial carbon tax on the steel mills here at Stelco and Dofasco, elsewhere, Algoma, and Evraz, to shut down our steel industry with taxes. That is more Liberal recklessness. What is actually responsible is to unleash our resources by repealing the No Development Law C-69, getting rid of the Liberal energy cap, bringing in the shovel-ready zones that are pre-permitted for construction, incentivizing 2.3 million home builds. All of these projects will put our people to work with powerful paychecks that buy them affordable food and homes for a change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's press conference. Ça conclut la conférence de presse.
French?
That concludes today's press conference. Thank you.
Sorry, what's that?
We have been listening into. Oh, wait, we'll just pause and we'll finish listening to Pierre Poilievre here.
Yes, I need to answer that in French.
Non, j'ai entendu la question.
Yes,
j'ai entendu la question, mais
question.
c'est bien apprécié que vous le répétiez.
Perhaps you could repeat it. And I'm very happy to answer that question because the question is it responsible to pursue economic growth for a change? Is that a responsible policy? After a liberal decade with no growth, with a recession per capita in the last 5 years when Mark Carney was the economic advisor to Justin Trudeau, is it responsible to pursue economic growth? It's not just responsible, it's absolutely critical, more critical than ever now. Yes, we must eliminate the anti-development law C-69 to build LNG Quebec. We must remove the cap on Canadian energy. We must incentivize housing construction with 2.3 million new homes and apartments. It is more necessary than ever before to cut taxes on work, on industry, to bring back the $500 billion in investment driven away by the Liberals over the last 10 years. So it's not only responsible to do this, it is necessary to pursue economic growth in the private sector for a change. That is how we can be strong to defend our country. That is how we will deliver real change for an affordable life, a safe life for all Canadians. Thank you.
That concludes today's press conference.
Okay, now we will resume. We were just listening in to Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre. He was speaking in Hamilton, Ontario. Hello and welcome inside the CBC Newsroom. I'm Arthi Pohl. We are 5 days away from Election Day. Party leaders, as you see, are fanning out to ridings of significance. Poilievre and Hamilton, a riding that has historically been a Liberal stronghold. The incumbent there is seeking re-election. Now, Poilievre, as you heard, campaigning there today with an announcement to shut down 10 cities. His announcement aligned with the tough on crime message the Conservatives have been pushing out, including in their platform that was unveiled yesterday. For more now, let's head over to Ottawa. The CBC's Janice McGregor listening in to the announcement and also to the questions that we heard from Pierre Poilievre following that. What stood out to you, Janice?
So I'm going to unpack what the actual announcement is in a second. I just want to do a bit of course correction work because we heard some things there that do require some correction. First, in that last answer, you heard Poilievre accuse the Liberals of keeping all the existing spending and then putting more spending on top of it. That misrepresents the Liberal platform. In fact, there is belt tightening in the Liberal platform. There is a plan to get what Mark Carney is portraying as operational spending down, balancing the operational spending budget aspect of it by 2028. And if you've been listening to Jagmeet Singh, actually, that has opened up a flank for the Liberals with the New Democrats because they've been questioning actually what the Liberals are going to have to cut in order to make that happen. And that has been sort of something he went after Mark Carney in the last federal election debate. So that portrayal by the Conservative leader is not accurate. The other thing about that quote about the car keys, which sort of was sort of explained with some derision in the room by Pierre Poilievre there, actually it wasn't the Toronto Police Chief that made that comment. It was a constable. And in fact, the Toronto Police Service walked back that suggestion. It was quite controversial at the the time. The public was quite upset by it, and Toronto police were forced to kind of clarify that actually that's not their advice, to just let the thieves steal your car, and sort of there are other things you can do to sort of prevent that. So again, just want to correct the record there. Poilievre was waving around a social mobility report that was prepared by sort of a think tanky kind of a part of the government that often sort of comes out with reports, often worst case scenario reports that people might want to consider. That report, unlike how the Conservative leader portrayed it, does not represent the advice or even the predictions of the federal government about where social mobility in this country may be going by 2040. It was just laying out some scenarios that could be plausible but may not be, possible, and also sort of things that certainly certain government policies could disrupt the trajectory of those things. So Poilievre was saying, well, this will happen. That actually isn't how the report puts it. And finally, what he said about the Liberal election platform being the same as it would have been under Justin Trudeau. We also know that's not true. The Liberal Platform Committee did not report even their suggestions, finish their consultations until actually March, right before sort of the new Liberal leader was picked. There wasn't anything that was done and ready to go for Justin Trudeau in the fall, unlike how Pierre Poilievre presented that. And Mark Carney's War Room has also said that that's not an accurate suggestion. Indeed, he took what the Platform Committee did, made some changes of his own in terms of sort of how he would like to govern going forward, even from there. So that out of the way, let's get to the actual announcement, which has to do with tent cities, something that's been very upsetting for people to see on their streets, but also made people feel unsafe. And it's a big part of the kind of public safety platform that the Conservatives are putting in front of Canadians. The most kind of significant move here is amending the criminal code so that police have the ability to charge and actually arrest people who remain on the street as a deterrent, as a way of discouraging people from using public spaces with temporary structures and tents. This platform clarifies that police do have the legal right to go in and disrupt these encampments and get them out of there, and also gives judges, would give judges the authority to order people who are charged with that, to sort of go on and seek mandatory drug treatment. Now, I'm going to stop here because although there are some people who are experiencing homelessness who do suffer from addictions issues, these are kind of two separate issues. There are people who struggle with drug addiction and people who do not have a home. There is some overlap in the Venn diagram, but there are also people who are dealing with those things uniquely. Nevertheless, this would be a criminalization of the issue, if you will. The platform is silent on how much this would cost the justice system or even the corrections system in terms of needing to accommodate people once they were arrested and picked up, charged, and I guess found guilty eventually. Also, it speaks of having a housing-first approach to homelessness, wanting to get people housed, but there is no kind of articulation in the building housing portion of the Conservative platform of a plan to build perhaps supportive housing or housing targeted at people who may have unique issues, or even sort of extremely affordable, radically affordable rental units. So it's not clear sort of what the housing is that they would provide first. Finally, they are costing a number of drug treatment spaces, 50,000 addiction treatment spaces above and beyond what is available for people now. Again, because they are sort of seeking to deal with that piece of the issue. But presumably some of those 50,000 would be available for people who have a home. It's just they need drug treatment. So again, just want to be careful not to conflate these things. But those are the actual sort of platform points they're making. The other news that Poilievre was announcing today was an endorsement specifically from Toronto's police union, but in general, police unions have backed some or all of these proposals in the past. The Conservative Party historically has had a close relationship with the police unions on a number of these measures intended to make it easier to enforce the law.
Janice, thank you for all of that. We appreciate it. That is CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. And as we, of course, continue to keep an eye on election developments, we're also closely watching Vatican City again today as millions across the world continue to mourn the death of Pope Francis. In fact, we're learning the Vatican may extend visits to see Pope Francis's body until midnight on Friday due to the high flow of pilgrims. We know that the Pope is now lying in state in St. Peter's Basilica, and there are long lines as people pay their final respects. Thousands of people have already passed through the Basilica, where Swiss guards stand to attention beside the casket. Earlier, a solemn procession brought the Pope's body from his nearby residence. His funeral is set for Saturday and will be attended by many world leaders. And the CBC's Megan Williams is in St. Peter's Square, and she joins us now live. Megan, you had an opportunity earlier today to go inside the Basilica. Tell us what it was like.
That's right, Deanna. I went in earlier with a group of journalists. I was fortunate enough to jump the lineup, which is now 8 hours long and is only going to get longer as more and more people pour into Rome to say their last goodbye to Pope Francis. As you said, his body was brought from his guest house inside the Vatican up the grand staircase of St. Peter's Basilica, and it is now there on display. A simple coffin. It's an open coffin. The Pope didn't want anything elaborate. He didn't want anything too elevated. People are entering into St. Peter's Basilica on either side of the colonnade. There are two separate lineups, and then they wind through the piazza, the square there, and down the center of the Basilica, taking videos, taking photographs.